started. Hopefully at some point we'll take the screen down and put the lights up, because right now I can't see it. So this is the Town of Woodbridge annual budget hearing. Today is April 24th, 2023. And we're going to begin with some remarks from our first selectman, Beth Keller.
Thank you, Matt. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So far, so good. Okay. Good evening and welcome to the preliminary budget hearing for fiscal year 2024. I'd like to begin with a heartfelt thank you to all the volunteer board and commission members who work with department heads and staff to create responsible budget requests. Thank you to the volunteer members of the Board of Directors and the Board of Finance who reviewed each request and worked together to balance those requests with an obligation to residents to keep expenses in check. And thank you to the Town Administrative Officer, Finance Director Tony Genovese, and his staff, whose work and expertise supports the entire process. I'm also grateful to all the residents who are here tonight. Government is meant to be a collaborative process, and your participation here is an essential component of that collaboration. Each fall, the budget process begins when the town departments calculate its anticipated financial needs for the following fiscal year. Budget requests are considered and refined over the following several months. This year, the Board of Selectmen reviewed the overall budget request and voted unanimously to approve their forward on the Board of Finance for their review constraints. The Board of Finance further reduced the overall budget. Tonight, we look forward to hearing your questions and listening to your comments. Town department heads are also here in case there are specific departmental questions. No votes will be taken tonight. The Board of Finance will consider the input received this evening and may make further adjustments in the coming weeks. They will then make their final proposal to the annual town meeting in May. That meeting will take place at 7:30 p.m. here in the John Brady Auditorium on May 15th. I'd like to remind residents and town officials do all they can to access grants and other non-tax revenue, including state and federal funds, to underwrite local services and projects. As a direct result of this, over the past 2 years, Woodbridge has received more than $6 million. Thank you again for attending tonight's hearing, and now I will introduce our Town Administrative Officer, Finance Director, Tony Genovese. Okay.
Hello?
Yep.
You good? Thank you, Beth. I have in front of a presentation here to present the 23-24 preliminary budget. When we start the budget process, there are 4 budget priorities that are followed. First is controlling of taxes, which is balancing wants versus needs and actively pursuing grant opportunities, as Beth mentioned. Continuing fiscal stewardship, maintain our AAA bond rating, and our GFOA award winning budget and audit, which promotes best practices in both reports. Maximize efficiency and effectiveness throughout our operation, and this budget maintains service levels. This is the second year of our online budget tool, and this is the digital budget that has a lot of interactive information. We're going to try to bring it up on the screen here. Let's see if this works. No. Okay, well, if it works, you would have seen it.
Mention if you will. Mind's eye.
Your phone?
Okay. So this is our interactive budget. which, if you go on our website, you'll be able to link directly to this budget. But basically, it has a number of categories, which is in the green menu along the top here. And the first is our introduction, which introduces the reader to the budget. It has a lot of information about Woodbridge in general, and the history of Woodbridge, and how we create the budget, our calendar, and stuff like that. The second category is budget overview, which has the strategic plan in it, has executive overview of the budget in more detail, some budget guidelines, and some budget issues that we ran into during the budget process. The next is a summary of our general fund, which summarizes the entire budget by expenditure and revenue. The next section is our department's general fund revenues as an example. This is intergovernmental revenue. You'll see it shows a summary of what's in this budget. It has a 10-year history of our intergovernmental revenues, revenue by department, a description of all of our major grant revenues that we have in our general fund, history of those revenues, and the line item detail. So you can see there's a lot of information here that you can review. Next is town departments. We're going to highlight that town department we think did an excellent job on their page. Karen's going to go to that shortly. That's human services. So department pages have a description of the department, what the department does. Some highlights from the 23 year. You see they're doing a lot of work there at human services. There's an expenditure summary of the department for the past 10 years. The dark green, well, just a little, the dark green represents actual, the light green is budget. So you can see along that line there, it's relatively flat here for many years. When it goes down here, this is because of COVID primarily, but you can see that it's relatively flat for the past 10 years. Okay. And then it has the department by expenditure type. The next category is education. It just links to each website. Following that is 10 years, a secure capital plan. And finally, that blue arrow there is a debt that has our government-wide debt by type, and some debt fiscal indicators. So just some more information for you to review about our budget. Hopefully it doesn't make that loud noise again. Okay. This is a history of our grand list growth past 10 years. As you can see, it's reduction consistently. This is a reval year, a reduction, another reval year here, a reduction. This is actual. There's a slight increase in 22, primarily because of autos that drove this increase. Our schools are 62% of our budget. The Woodbridge Board of Education increase this year is 3.64%. Amity Regional is 4.48%. That's an increase in the town of Woodbridge budget, although the overall budget for Amity is, I believe, 2.25%. But our portion is higher because our population, our average daily membership is increased for the 24 year. Another thing something different in this year's budget is the Amity surplus. I'll get into that a little bit more in revenues, but we received $229,000 as a credit in 23 instead of a revenue, which we would usually use in the 24 budget. So I'll explain a little bit of that later in the process here. So over the past 7 years, I've done a good exercise to just see where our expenditures have increased from 2016 to 23. So over that time period, the Board of Education has increased just about 21.5%. Amity is 27%. This is, if you compare these 2 years, the town budget is 5.53%. You can see the differences in those increases. To break that down further by expenditure group, can see further that the two board rate increases are here, as indicated earlier. These first 6, 7 categories are essentially the other expenditure groups over that time period. As you can see, general government, community services is recreation, library, human services, and debt service. Ironically, debt service and capital sort of equal each other in terms of their impact on the budget. This is our budget timeline. We begin the budget in capital budget in September, and that goes through December. The operating budget starts in October through December. And in December and January, our boards of selectmen and finance meet to receive those requests and to review them and ask questions and meet. The boards then meet in February, and the board of selectmen meets in February. The board of finance meets in March to make final recommendations to this hearing, which is tonight. The town meeting in May will then vote on the budget, and the budget begins July 1. Our revenues are essentially 90% property taxes. That's actually decreased over the past year or two because our investment income has risen and our intergovernmental revenue has risen a little. Closer to 92% last year. These are our changes by category. Some highlights for you are department charges are up 12.83%. A good portion of that is our building permits. Due to our recent activity, those are up 45%, or $135,000 due to recent activity in town. Our rec fees have also gone up about 7.5%. Another highlight is interest income here. Of course, as you all know, our rates have skyrocketed since last year's budget. Those are up 625%, or $275,000. So those are some major items. Another is our grant revenue went up. Our motor vehicle reimbursement grant, which is a grant the state provides to try to hold towns harmless for capping our motor vehicle mill rate of 32.46, has increased also. One decrease you see here is in the previous budgets, we would use Amity surplus as a revenue, and as a result, revenue would then be recorded here. Because we receive it as a credit, essentially gives us a surplus of in the Amity expenditure line for the current year. So we increase fund balance to account for that change in revenues. So our fund balance contribution this year is going from $400,000 to $800,000 to reflect that change. Here are the expenditure budgets broken down by town, Woodbridge Board of Education, and Amity. These are our general fund highlights for our different categories. A couple of things worth noting. First is capital expenditures. You see those are up about 30%. We have a corresponding reduction in debt service of about 7%. The town is currently, our labor contracts currently expire June 30th, so none of our departments have cost of living adjustments in them. There's a slightly higher contingency in the Board of Finance, which is the reason for this large increase here. And we had some difficulties this year with some of our commodities due to inflationary costs, including natural gas and IT-related costs. We find a lot of our IT costs are going up, including our own, due to cybersecurity and a couple of other reasons. So our mill rate for the preliminary budget is, for real estate and personal property, is 45.08, which is up from 43.77, 2.99%. It's important to note that the motor vehicle rate remains capped at 32.46, so that does not change. I wanted to also put some information here about the American Rescue Plan. The capital budget includes some funding for the use of those funds. The town received a little under $2.6 million in In the previous budget, $275,000 was allocated for the completion of our senior center, which is underway. We're hopeful that'll be done soon. The remaining funds in the budget are divided amongst 4 projects. And that's $1.3 million for improvements in the business district, $334,000 to help renovate the former firehouse. Currently have a grant of $2 million for that. The $333,000 for road improvements in the center of town. And finally, $333,000 to renovate the center gym. We currently have a $500,000 grant for that, so that will be in addition. And lastly, this is our debt service as it currently exists. We have our existing direct debt down here. This represents the debt we have currently, which is the improvements at the Beecher School, includes the country club, includes the public works facility, and the new radio program, system that we purchased a few years ago. Direct debt under consideration would be the debt as it relates to projects that are in the capital plan that's in your budget this evening. That includes the improvements at the police station and some requests at the school. Finally, this is our share of AMI debt, which goes down to almost nothing here. When I first started here, there was a really large debt service that the school had, and now you can see it's almost paid off here. So. And that's it.
Can we get some light now?
Please.
Trying to avoid the jokes, so it's the same. My kids are getting all
Okay, at this point, we will, as we have in the past, we will begin reviewing the budget department by department. And we'll give the board of finance, if you have the grade mailer that you got about the budget, or if you pick something up on your way in. It's the summary of all the budgets together, totaling $56,253,395. So if you have a question or a comment, please come to the microphone right here, identify yourself and your address, and ask your question. Just a couple of dates to make note of. A lot of people are asking about Amity. Of course, we can't affect any change in Amity at this point, but Amity will have their district meeting, I think it's called. That would be a week from tonight, at 5:30, so it'll be May 1st, and it would be somewhere here in Amity. Then the next day, May 2nd, is the Amity budget referendum, where all 3 towns get to vote yes or no on the Amity budget. So keep those dates in mind. As I said, we can certainly hear comments about Amity, but we can't really affect any changes to Amity. So with that, again, I'm going to start, bear with me because it's still kind of dark in here. We're going to go department by department. And again, if you have any questions, please come forward. And later on in the show, you can come back if there's something you think of that we've already moved on to that department. So, with that, we'll start with the first department, which is the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance is proposing $685,821.
I'm Bob Bell, 68 Cornhill Road. I actually just have some general comments before we get into it. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'll get a little closer. Good. So, just have some general comments, and then I do have some comments as we go through line item by line item, but I did want to make these comments before we start. First of all, in a respectful way, I want to make 2 comments here. First of all, Beth, I sorry for the loss of your mom recently, sad loss. And also, today, 10 years ago, in 2 days, marks the 10th anniversary when we lost Ed Sheehy. Probably about an hour or so after this meeting. I was probably the last resident in the town that actually spoke to Ed as he was leaving the gymnasium that night. So it was really a sad time. So I think we all should put him and his family on our prayers tonight. So, all right. Also want to point out, Matt, I want to thank you for all the work that you've done for the town, serving on this committee over the years. And I know you and I haven't always agreed on everything, but that's okay. You know, that's how you come to better resolutions. Really appreciate recently your stance, how you've come out dealing with some of the issues over at Amity. Totally endorse what you're doing there. You know, as I look at what happens here in town, and I'm just going to, you know, Beth, you've been saying we need to be paying attention. And, you know, and I think I've been a resident that's paid attention pretty closely over the years, and I've had some observations. Not all of them been agreed to. Some, that's interesting. So I'll give you a couple to think about here. One of which is, and I'll thank Dave for asking this question because it bothered me for quite some time, Dave Vogel. I kept wondering about the arrangement with the EV chargers. Okay? So the EV chargers were, we accepted the $10,000 grant for the one over at the library, 2014. They were installed shortly thereafter. At the time, you may recall, probably not, that I actually opposed the idea. I thought that fast charging units over near the Marriott would have made more sense economically for a couple of reasons. First of all, it would be more useful to somebody having a fast charging unit and they come to the businesses there, and actually you could make money on those. So now, long story short now, here we are, 2023, and thank you, Dave Vogel, for asking this question. It was my understanding, and I don't want to confuse the facts because I may not have them exactly right, for the first year or so, or two, the chargers were going to be free, and then they were going to start charging the people who use them. And I guess I learned recently, I guess we're going to do some upgrades, and hey, we're going to start charging for that. Wow, that's great. So I did some quick calculations, and I went online to figure out how much it costs to charge a vehicle. And I guess you can get all sorts of numbers, but it looks like about $15.52 for the period of time that they charge. And if the worst case scenario would be that all 4 chargers, 2 at the library, 2 at town hall, could be getting used around the clock, okay? Now, I do happen to notice that quite often that the nice Teslas that I can't afford to buy are typically charging over at the library. Those are the same people that took the $7,500 credit for buying those vehicles. And so if I run the numbers all the way out, and if we were charging all the time, I think that's about $271,000 worth of income. Now, okay, I don't know what it costs. Okay, I'm going to guess it's somewhere in that range if that's the number I found online. And so if I took that, and obviously it's a probably a high number, and I divided over the 3,000 homes or whatever in town, I guess that gets me to about $90 per resident to be charging somebody's nice Tesla over there. Just don't think that's right. I'm glad I'm finally making, that upset me too. Okay? So, you know, I just point that is just a small example of the things that we need to look at as a town, because it's my money, our money, not other people's money. And we should look at every penny we spend in that way. And so later on, I'm going to make one other comment on the budget. You know, you all serve in a very difficult position, okay? And it starts with the boards and commissions and the people who oversee those boards and commissions, who I assume that the process is when the budget comes from that, say it's recreation or the police, whatever it is, that board and commission is accountable for looking at that budget and asking the questions on the line items. I assume that the budgets for, say, Public Works and ones like that, those are probably ones, Tony, you review line by line and hold those department heads accountable for each one. And some combination maybe of others. That's the way I think it works in that way. So then when these budgets come in, what ends up happening is, hopefully, when a particular department has an increase, they've looked at their budget from line item by line item, and they've looked at, yes, this year IT cost is going to be up. Is there something that's in my budget I no longer need or I can cut back on? And I think, I'm not going to say no one understand this, I think and feel, and I have someone doing some little research for me on the side, not me, and came back and was pretty disturbed and said, there's kind of a mentality from a number of the department heads that whatever is in their budget already is theirs. You don't touch that. And the only thing of debate is going forward. Now, that's probably misinformation. So to that end, as we go through tonight, I'm going to ask, as we get to each department where there's an increase, a major increase in item, I'm going to ask this question, and you can probably save me from getting up. I'm going to ask the department head to get up and say, here are the 3 items that we reduced, even though we had an increase, okay? Or was the rest of their line items left the way they were? Now, there's a really simple solution here, because when these budgets come in, it seems as though there's a propensity for not wanting to say no. Even though their budgets have been cut down, we're still dealing with a pretty substantial increase and a pretty high mill rate, once again. You could really reduce the pressure on yourselves significantly and not be the bad guy by doing one simple thing that we've been asking for some time now, is a charter revision and have the budget for the town voted for just like the Amity budget. And that would relieve a lot of pressure and a lot of debate over this, because the townspeople would decide what they want to do and what they don't want to do. So thank you. I'm sorry I took a little longer than you probably wanted me to, but that's who I am. I'll ask the questions along the way. If there's anything that I may comment on here that anyone wants to make a comment, dispute, or give me the facts, I'm happy to hear it. Thank you.
Okay, I think what we should say here is that we're going to limit it to 3 minutes, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, next up is a probate court, which is $9,500, and that's a contractual or a statute that we have to pay. The town clerk's office, $236,630. Registrar of voters, $61,290.
Good question about that. Chuck Pine, 162 Center Road. I probably should have walked instead of walked around the parking. Does that budget recognize the fact that we're going to have a lot of early voting now? It doesn't. Any idea what that's going to cost the town on top of what we're paying now?
Well, you want me to answer it? Yeah, they haven't passed the law yet, and there are several
Yeah, there are variations, but
versions
we're
out
getting
there.
close. Right?
And there's some big questions about whether referendum is included or not. So we have done an estimate. If they pass early voting, it's going to be somewhere between 10 and
It's not like 10 days. That's
10 to 20. Yeah, if it's 10 days, and referendum are included, we're talking
Right.
between 5 and 10,000 probably based on what it is now, and an ability to actually use fairly minimal staffing. In order, if we had to do a full polling place, we'd be talking 15.
No, but it's not. It's going to be town hall. People couldn't basically
But
vote
yeah,
in the local
that's
way.
essentially what it is.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we'll be able to do minimal staffing. The legislative, Office of Legislative Budget estimates $5,000 per town for this. We estimate, we're leaving it between 5 and 10 to leave it open.
All right, so would it be wise to bump that number up before we go to the final vote at the town meeting? Because you see it coming. Okay, thanks.
Okay, government access television, $26,648. General administration, again, that's primarily town insurance, $310,200. Information systems, pretty self-explanatory also, it's all our computer systems, $215,705. The Finance Department, not the Board of Finance, the Finance Department, which is Tony Genevieve's department, $269,263. Tax Collector's Office, $165,169. Tax Assessor, $182,405. Does anybody know when the next reassessment can be?
Next year.
Next year? Revamp. October 2024? It should be interesting because the last couple I've seen drops, so this one I don't think it's revamped. Board of Assessment Appeals, $2,000. Board of Finance, that's my board. The largest item in there, of course, is the contingency fund, $441,446. Yes.
Just, my name is Dan. Just a quick question. I'm not really familiar
We
with.
need to know who you are and...
Yes, Dan Babajan. Should I?
Yeah, why don't you come up?
Thank you.
Dan Babajan. You need my address? I know. Sorry. All right. I'm on 8 Oak Hill. Just, this is my first time actually getting involved with the budget process. I just need to understand what the contingency is. That's my question on this topic.
The reason, there's a labor contract, or several labor contracts that are going to be settled, but at this point, obviously, we don't know how much they're going to be settled for. So the money to settle those when the time comes is in our contingency fund. And that's why it's what it is. Because when those contracts settle, we have to get the money from somewhere. We can't go into huge budgets we don't know, so that money we use for that. And keep in mind too that in the Board of Finance, the contingency fund, we're very careful on how we use it. At the end of the year, if we have it, we give it right back to the town. Next is town plan and zoning, 62,480.
I'll have the question. Oh, just grab a seat.
Go ahead.
What are they spending that money for? I thought, are they redrafting some part of the town plan?
It's to start the process of the town plan.
Start the process. You bring an outside company in? Does it get paid in pieces? I thought that would be a contract job over the same year.
That's correct. It's to start the process of bringing an outside firm in to start the process.
So that's the RFP process to bring one company in?
Correct.
For 60 grand? I'll write it for 30. How about that?
That's their entire budget.
15.
I think it's just 10,000.
Okay, they undercut me. Okay. Thank you.
Fine. Zoning Board of Appeals, 2,650.
Correct, it's 20,000.
Oh,
So, I was...
back in the game.
Yeah.
The center, of course, we know what the center is. This is the money to operate the center, $104,950.
Excuse me.
5 Oldstone is my primary residence. A couple of things. Whenever I look at the way the government is functioning, I like to compare similar things. When I did this with the dog pound, I found out, this was years ago, we were euthanizing much more than other towns, and we corrected it. I happened to look at a town very similar to Woodbridge. In demographics, I picked Easton, because Easton has very little commercial development, mostly residential. Does anyone here know what Easton's mill rate is? 28.33. So something has got to be wrong with the way that we're budgeting, because Woodbridge now is the town probably of our size with the largest mill rate in the entire state. I don't understand why that is. When I moved here with my family in 1976, this town was pretty austerely run. And I hate to say it, over the last 8 years, it's really not been run in an austere way at all. The center school was a prime example. We have a grant to spend all this money in the basement of Center School, which is not a great space, and it's never going to be a great space. It's a basement. Yet we then have the country club building that could be a beautiful home for our senior center that we're letting rot. And the same is true of the old firehouse, which is the next budget item. Why are we spending millions and millions on the firehouse, which is a garage, when we have the beautiful country club building, again, which could solve all the needs of the community center? So we're using our money really poorly in Woodbridge. And the decisions have been made largely without public comment, because it was during COVID that these decisions were made. The town did not have a chance at all to chime in. Things were done to the country club, like filling in the pool, which no one in the public knows. I ask all my clients every day at the Woodbridge Vet, did you know the country club pool's gone? Most of them don't. So lots of things have been done without public comment, poorly, and we really need to change things in this town, or we're going to make ourselves not a town that's desirable with really, really high mill rate. Right now, people are still moving here, but there's going to be a point where the mill rate becomes prohibitive. And I'd like to know why we have such a different mill rate than Easton. I'd like someone on the budget committee to address that.
Awfully hard to do without having the numbers.
Well, I'm just giving you
Just throw a
demographics.
town at us. You know nothing about Easton.
Well, Easton is very similar to Woodbridge in
I'd like to see their
demographics.
educational system, I'd like to see them, but without the information, how can I answer your question?
You should explore it.
Well,
Can I make a comment? What are the houses
Miles Katz, 43 North Ipswich Road. To the previous speaker's point, I agree that the mill rate seems a big point of contention. However, and to his point, there's a lot of things that we could be working on in the town that increase the way in which residents want to live here and participate in town activities and really just enjoy living here. I did want to say though that if his clients aren't aware of the town pool being filled and decisions like that, it could be a symptom of them not using the pool in the first place. So I don't think that all of the decisions that you guys have made have really negatively impacted the town in such a way. As you mentioned, people are still moving here and still finding reasons to come here and love being here. So I just wanted to say that.
Chuck, you have to go do that.
Soon.
all right.
They're going to
Any other questions on the center? The former firehouse, $15,792. I'm assuming those are mostly utilities.
Utilities, yes.
Right.
Excuse me, one last question. Tony, how much is it estimated for the firehouse project to cost in total? Not our grant, but the entire amount of money that's projected to be spent on renovating the garage into the community center.
So we currently are refining our budget and our plans for that. So we don't have a final number on that yet. We're working through that. We hope to have that at the committee meetings probably within the month. And then we'll see, how that compares to the budget. Currently, as we get $2 million.
Okay, next is the police department, $3,406,847.
Okay, my question here is I see that tires, oil, and gas is a 21.8% increase. I also see we have two new line items this year, machinery of $1,900 and furniture and fixtures for $4,500. Other than the 2.1% decrease on computers, was there anything else that the police department reduced or looked at to make up for the 21% increase in tires? And I'd also like an explanation what's happened with tires and oil and gas.
Good evening. The explanation on the tires, oil and gas, the contract for the gas is a bid price that the town bids, and that has gone up substantially. The price of oil, as we all know, has gone up substantially, and as the price of tires. So that's what the increase for that is. I mean, I could look it up and try to get you specifics on it. Those are just all standard price increases and are based upon our average use every year as far as that goes. And as far as the reductions go, there's one reduction in the computer line, there's another reduction in the longevity line, and I think more importantly in our budget is that we kept a lot of lines constant once again year after year, despite inflation, and do the best we could do with the resources we have, and quite frankly, we're just getting by paying out the bills, and year after year, we're repeatedly buying less and less, trying not to increase, but as the prices go up, we have to compare with that and continue just to function. Hope that helps explain.
Chief, sorry. Can you comment also on the workforce in terms of changes from, say, 5 years ago to today?
Yes, and more importantly, our workforce has been diminished from 26 to 23, so we've cut drastically. Even though it's only 3 people in a small force is really a significant amount. And with all that's going on in our country and our nation, we're still providing the same resources and getting the job done with substantially less manpower.
Thank you for the work that you do, and especially checking out at the gas station to make sure that we're safe when we pump gas in our car. Love seeing those things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, fire commission, $1,113,204. Medical services, that's the ambulance.
Okay, not looking at any one department. I'm just looking at the ones where there's big increases or there's no decreases anywhere. We got a 7.66% increase. I'm not going to go through the line items, they're pretty obvious on here. Can we get some fire commission? Yeah. Can we get some explanation as to the ones that are the big increases here? And then also, I'd like to know, were there any line items that were looked at to, just like we do at home, we go over on budget on something, and we try to find something we eliminate.
Sean Roll, Fire Chief. So as you could go through, you see a decrease of 100% in part-time maintenance. That money got moved over to cleaning custodial line, so that's why it shows a 56.25% increase. So it was not a 56.2% increase, it was moving from line to line to consolidate. Another line was software maintenance. It went up from 25 to 41. That has to do with our cybersecurity that the town insurance requires. A lot of that is, I can read off some of the ticket items that we had to do this year, which includes our Fortinet, SentinelOne, VMware, Duo Authentication, the Barracuda Backup, the Barracuda Essentials, the Dell Support. So those are some of the items that we didn't have a choice, we had to go up. Going down, communication security, it's going from 38 to 52. The reason for that is when the firehouse was built back in 2009, when we moved in, we have the S2 security system, which is the card access door system. So since 2009, Town Hall has gone on card access, the center building has gone on card access, I believe the library has gone on card access, Public Works, all that runs through our system that we have to maintain. So that's strictly not the firehouse. We're talking multiple departments here. Going on with tires, just like the police chief said, tires have gone way up this year. So when we looked at purchasing, we have to purchase tires every 7 years. Emergency vehicle apparatus, the tires have to be replaced every 7 years based on fire trucks alone have carrying water, carrying all the weight, 365 days a year, 24/7. It's not like a dump truck where you use it, you empty out your load at the end of the day, and then the truck sits for, could be 16 hours. So in our case, we have to keep everything loaded. So after 7 years, even though the tires look like they're in good shape, we have to replace them due to the wear on the tire and the weight of the vehicle that has been sitting on the tire. So that number is strictly driven by the cost of inflation this year.
As is everything else.
As is everything else. Gas is going up. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory as we have seen. Natural gas, you're going to see a 113% increase. So, and maybe Tony can speak on this a little bit more. So we pay SCG and then we pay another company for distribution. So all that has gone extremely high. So it's more than double what we were paying before. So we're not using more gas, we're using the same amount. It's just the cost of distribution, the cost of gas is going up, and that's the need for it. Water, once again, hydrants are going up 7.5%. That's what we've been told by the water company. That's pretty a standard number in the last few years. It's going up. The 7.5% is actually a conservative number. We could see an increase up to 12%. So 7.5% is most likely what the water is going to go up. That also includes any damaged hydrants throughout the year that need to be fixed, and that could get costly really quick. And then the last one, machinery. That part of that money, so we all carry pagers on our side. We have a pager replacement every year that we have to replace. On top of that, also, the building Wi-Fi has failed and we need to replace that. So within that number, it's not just the pager number, I believe that number is the $75 number, and then the rest of it is the Wi-Fi for the new firehouse.
Thank you so much. I realize that
it's very difficult when you're dealing with safety to say, oh, we'll do away with this because it's safety. So,
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, medical services.
Excuse me for a second, I just wanted to say something. In regard to what you just said, my name is Robert Cancelum, I live over on Lisdale Turnpike. I saw in the register, it said that Pura was looking for, the water company was looking for an increase, but Pura said that they weren't going to give it to them, so I disagree with what he said, that the price of water was going up. So I don't know where he came out with those figures.
Well, I think you're talking about the hydrants. It's a different issue. We get charged a fee based on the number of hydrants we have. It really has no bearing on the cost of the water.
And, you know, I want to go back talking about the police department. You know, I live over on Litchfield Turnpike, and I see cars every day going up that road, speeding. I'd love to know where the police department is, stopping these cars. It's absolutely amazing. I have an issue over around the corner, over on Bradley Road, Teddy's Auto Body and Junkyard. They park in front of that business every day. I take my dog for a walk, and I see cars whipping out from Lunar Drive over by the tennis courts, coming to that stop sign in the corner of Lunar and Bradley Road. They don't stop at that stop sign, they just whiz around the corner. I happen to be taking my dog for a walk, and a couple of times almost get clipped because I have to walk out into the middle of the road because the car's parked in front of Teddy's Auto Body. I called the police department. Well, Mr. Pamela, what do you want us to do? We go over there, we tell them they're not supposed to park there. But all we can do is issue them a $10 ticket. Well, maybe what we need to do is increase the price of that ticket to maybe $50 or $100 and do it every day until they learn their lesson. Because every day they do the same thing, it's repetitive. Every day there's 2 or 3 cars parked in front of the place. You have signs there that say no parking. There's definitely a problem there. So the police department needs to do their job and give them tickets. And then I see over at the baseball park, someone bought a boat and they decided to park their boat with the trailer on the ballpark property. I had to go out and do my homework to find out that a person that lives off of Merritt bought the boat, but they decided they didn't want to park it on their property, so they park it over at the baseball park. Issue, once you found out, and then the cops end up putting a notice on the boat. Finally, the person got the notice, and then they took the boat and they put it on their property. So now the police department needs to go over that house because the trailer did not even have a license, a plate on it. So what they should have done was, when I told them where that boat was, now you go over there and you issue them a ticket for parking on the baseball park field that's owned by the town of Woodbridge. Right there, you're probably talking $2,000 or $3,000 worth of tickets. Do your job. Thank you.
Sorry, I got to reply to the hydrant line. The hydrant line is going up. It's not big. We have 138, 139 hydrants in town. It constitutes about 10% of the town that has hydrants. We get charged not by the hydrant, we get charged by every foot of water main that's in the road. So we don't get charged for water, so if we fight a house fire, we don't get charged for the water. There's no way to meter it. We get charged to have access to the water. So there's a big difference here. Even though Pura says they're not going up, or Pura's not going up on the cost, we still have to pay for every foot of main in the road, so we have access to the water, to the hydrants. So everywhere there's a water main, there's a hydrant, and we get charged for it. And we've increased our water main, even down by Teddy's Auto Body, going to the dog park, going to the animal shelter, and they brought city water in. So we have to pay that fee in that line also. So there are increases. beyond pure.
Okay, medical services, we'll try it again. $319,397, this is a contractual situation for the ambulance in town. That's what that is. Animal control, mentioned that.
Dave, I'm just going to pick this up when I look at this. I know that we cover a bunch of towns with the animal control. Where is the income that we collect from the other towns?
So it's a different fund, it's not part of the general fund. So the income, you can actually see in our financial audit there. It's also on our digital budget. The details are on there about animal control in the three towns that are members. So this is just the town's portion of that.
Is it working out for us, are we actually collecting more than it's costing us to cover the other towns?
I'm sorry?
Is it working out that we're actually collecting more money from the other towns than we're actually putting out? Because otherwise it's what's...
Yes. If you combine the other two towns, it's more than what Woodbridge contributes.
Right.
Okay, building department, and the building inspector, et cetera. We're going to be very busy with these new projects coming up. It's 128,859. Public Works, 1,422,617. Waste management, 642,192. Building maintenance, self-explanatory, all the buildings in town, 455,092. Human services, 503,992. Okay, recreation department, 547,941.
Hold on, Matt. I can't jump over it like him, but I'll walk down.
Come on, John.
John Adamo, Director of Recreation in Town of Woodbridge, 17 Apple Tree Lane. We were cut $4,800 by the Board of Selectmen. Okay, I understand that. We were cut another $20,000 by the Board of Finance. We asked for $24,000 in our budget, so our budget was completely cut. We were given $547,941, and we have $18,000 that we've gone up, and that's, of that $15,000 is minimum wage. Minimum wage as of June 1 will go to $15 an hour. 90% of our budget, the people that work for us, are minimum wage. So I think it's a little devastating to cut into our budget so deeply like that. Even though the pool is going to be closed for a while, I understand, that's already been taken out of our budget. If you look at it, if you take the time to look at it, you'll see that it's taken out. You'll also see that the fitness center, it's not $40,000, it's $30,000 in 2020, it's now $10,000. And we take in about $4,000. So the cost of the fitness center that we have is about $6,000. Those are the correct numbers that I want you to have. That's just the needs that we have. I'd also just like to say that I've been the director for 36 years, and I received 0 benefits for 36 years, and no compensation. That's a saving to the town. I didn't need the benefits. I have it from my other job. I have it from being old, security and stuff like that. But I would like the board, if they could, put $10,000 back into our budget, and that would go towards programming that we have. Thank you.
The last 3 departments that you went through, building maintenance, human services, and recreation, seem to do a very judicious job of
maintaining their budget and really watching the numbers. Obviously, I served on recreation for 12 years, and I know the way John manages his budget and watches things so close to the vest. And, oftentimes when we look at, every department has to decrease X percent. It's not always the right answer, because if you already have somebody who's managing their budget properly, and I know John does, that becomes good performance is punishing. And then someone who's not been managing their budget as tightly, it's easy for them to make that cut because it's already been there. So that's why it's so important to look at it from justifying each line item. And I know it's impossible. Now, it's impossible for you to look at every line item. That's not what you do. When it comes to you, you've got the number. You're counting on the boards and commissions and Tony to have gone through those line items. And I know you've pushed very hard over the years to try to push back, and typically you've been the bad guy in the board saying, look, something has to be slashed, and I do respect that. In regards to John Adamovich's comment, I trust that his need that he's asking for here, knowing what he deals with the minimum wage increases, is probably warranted. You probably should give it to him.
I'm just here, I was handed this letter. It's from Dr. Bill Silverberg. He was able to attend tonight. I'm going to read the letter. I'm not saying it's anything to do with me, but it's certainly not going to be in agreement with John. The following facts have come to my attention. Please verify what I am stating is basically correct. There is a line item in the recreation budget for an exercise room of approximately $37,300. I have been also told that there are approximately 35 individuals who use this facility with varying degrees of frequency. At this time, with the citizenry of the town of Woodbridge being concerned about fiscal responsibility and the relationship between want and need being blurred, the expenditure, as noted above, for 35 individuals of over $1,000 per individual to use the exercise room is not, in my opinion, justifiable. A local facility has offered reduced membership to these individuals presently using the exercise room, and probably a significant percentage of the individuals may have free use of a private facility through the Silver Sneaker program. I request the Board of Finance to give due consideration to removing the above sum of money from the recreation budget, and that it is not a responsible expenditure of town taxpayer dollars during these economic times. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for reading that. Could you read some other letters for it, like this in positive? That's the only thing I got, so you were able to just read that one. Okay, the Silver Sneakers is a program. You got to remember that JCC is regional. It's a regional program. Anybody from anywhere, from any state, any town, anywhere can join the JCC. We have a fitness center, a wellness center, which is based upon 98% town of Woodbridge people. We don't have 32 people. We have 50 people that have put into the program. We also, it's not $37,000. Where these numbers come, I don't know like this. Check the book. Take the book out right now. I have it with me right now. In 2020, $30,000. We've cut that budget back and forth. We're down to $10,000 running that center. So those are the numbers. Those are the complete numbers. And we're getting more people in, and we're doing a great job of advertising, publicity, really like that. To have a center, to have a wellness center that belongs to the people of the town of Woodbridge. You want to go to the JCC? 6 months. 6 months, then you have to join the JCC. For people that are not senior, to be under the Silver Sneakers, or Silver Bullets, or whatever you want to call it. But that's what it is. It's not that they're offering to it. They're offering to get people to come to their programs. All right? So then after 6 months, you have to pay if you're not the Silver Sneakers. Okay? That's the way it is. Thank you.
Matt, can I just say, we did receive...
One thing, hold on.
We did receive... Nicely done. You need a Zamboni for that. We did receive one letter in support of the Wellness Center, and I think that's the one that John is referring to, and it was distributed, so we do have that.
Thank you.
Okay, next is pool and gym expense, $95,871. Parks Department, which again is self-explanatory. This is Adam's department, $278,954. Thomas Darling House, $8,500. Library, $840,866.
Okay, I'll just make a comment on the work that Adam does at the Parks Department. He does a great job. I know he's been tight. I know got some people back there. Does a fantastic job taking care of the field, so I'm going to make that point. So I'm the library. So how many know how many hours a week the library is open? Anyone know?
Right there.
54?
Correct. Good answer. The director, you should know that. Okay, 54. In the summertime, it's a few hours less because it's not open on Saturday. Okay. All right.
That will probably be changing, by the way, so.
Okay. So there's an interesting piece that you provided in the book. I don't know if it's new this year. I just missed it in other years. But Tony, I appreciate this. The people per department, which was very nice. Gave me an opportunity to crunch some numbers last night. So there are 7 full-time employees that work in the library for $290,000, and you've got the director's salary. And so I took the average salary for the assistants. So we have the director, and then we have 6 assistants there for the $290 at $48,000. And then we have $224,000 for part-time other. And I had to calculate it using my own guesstimates, and I did it at $18 an hour, I did it $20 an hour, but it's probably a little less than that, but I could be wrong. And then I said to myself, how many people work at the library every hour the library is open? And you have any idea, or what do you think, based on walking through the library? What do you think? So my calculations at $18 for the part-time people, if you calculate it out, comes out to be 9.64 people per hour, every hour the library is open. And that's based on the full-time people getting 40 hours, and the calculation I did to get into it. Now, you probably remember I talked a little bit about time studies and things like that a couple of years ago. I'm sure nothing happened with that because you got to drill down. And I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong in the library. You could be doing absolutely everything right. I just happen to be able to do the calculation on that. I could do it in other departments, but I chose that one because the information was easily available to me to generate this. If you figure at $20 an hour, that means there's 9.2 people in the library. And I believe in the library. I think the library is great, but it seems like a lot of people to me. I don't know. Okay, so that's just my comment on that. So, and just curious, who gets hit with what department pays for the car chargers? Who's paying for that? What department? Do we know how much it is?
The electricity for the town hall would be for one here, and then the library would be for the library.
Do we know how much that's costing us per year?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, all right.
Would that add in here?
Sure.
You're a librarian.
Eric Wolfman, Library Director. I can't say I 100% understood your calculations there, but I generally think 9 people seems like a lot. I don't think it's that much, having been there all the time. Obviously, we're always very mindful of our staffing costs, which is the vast majority of our costs. And as I think everybody up there can attest to, there's been a lot of pressure every year to keep those costs down. We have kind of been cutting staff a little bit every year, so we are certainly not overstaffed, and we're kind of always struggling just to...
How many people do you think you need downstairs and upstairs at any one point in time?
That's pretty complicated. We usually have, just in terms of public service desks, we have 3 public service desks, 2 downstairs, 1 upstairs. We usually try to have 3 people downstairs and 2 upstairs, so that's 5 people. 5 people is sort of our regular staffing model just for the public service desks. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the library that is not just the public service. So those 5 people would be there on a Saturday or after hours when there's nobody else there, but there are definitely people there who have to run programs, budget, cover all the books and do all that stuff. And that takes a lot of staff that is sort of behind the scenes that you don't see. So there's 5 people is kind of just running the library, checking out books, helping people find books, answering reference questions, helping people with computers. But there's a lot of other stuff that goes on that you may not be aware of, but is necessary for the running of any library in the world.
And I don't serve on the library commission, so I don't have the opportunity to ask these questions, although I pay for it.
Of course. And of course, the library commission meetings are open to the public. Second Monday of every month. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Eric. Okay.
Dan again. Just two different questions on so just a comment, I need a comment on automation, I don't know what that means, but also, my kids go to libraries, so they enjoy the library. But I also noticed that they've eliminated the late fees. So, and maybe that's something that is okay for kids, but like maybe not okay for adults. So is there a balance we can strike and to recoup some of the money that we're spending on the library through the late fees? Like, I'm not sure why that went away.
And also automation.
Well, first, late fees. In general, this is about access to the library. I think there's a big movement afoot to remove late fees. I think almost every library in Connecticut, at least I know significantly more than half of the libraries in Connecticut, public libraries, have removed late fees. So this is not just us. And in terms of income and revenue, we have devoted more money to give back to the town from other fees. So we still have other fees that we get from photocopy machines and printing and stuff. So we are still giving some substantial amount of revenue to the town. But I think it is important not to have late fees so that everyone basically can use the library. Because late fees make it difficult for certain populations to use the library. So we're trying to make sure that there's a certain equity and access to the library. In terms of automation, I would say that the automation line is entirely devoted to the fees for our consortium line, which is a consortium of 30 libraries in southern Connecticut. And they provide all of our catalog software, most of our delivery system to get books through interlibrary loan and all that stuff. So they do a lot of stuff for us, including also our Wi-Fi and our network and all of this different stuff. And their fees just basically, they were flat for several years, actually 3 or 4 years in a row they were flat, but they did eventually have to go up. So that is basically just a flat paying of our fees to our consortium, which is 100% necessary. Without our consortium would cost us way, way, way more if we were to try to go alone and for much more service. So line is definitely necessary and essential.
Thank you. Okay, we get it. Conservation Commission, 2,300. Economic Development Commission, 3,450. Inland Wetlands Commission, 55,139. Now come the big ones. Employee fringe benefits, $5,133,010. Debt service.
Hypofan, it's at 36 Hawthorne Lane. So this is one of the bigger cost items. I just want to have a better understanding. So I'm talking about employee fringe benefits. So of course this is important. As a family, I know how important it is for benefits, but I do want to understand as I flip to the page, which is 51. For employee fringe benefits, I'm looking at it. So the major cost item I see in terms of its increase at page 51. If we look down at one of the items, seems to be about insurance, health insurance. So if we look at it's in the middle of the page, it's health insurance, general account. that's $1 million budget we're talking about, it's like 4% of increment. So have we covered in the slides that we talked about?
Yes, I could explain a little bit for you.
Okay.
So the employee fringe benefits, there's two things to consider. First of all, they're directly related to the operations of the rest of the budget. So the personnel numbers and the salary numbers and the rest of the budget directly reflect how much we have to pay in retirement, FICA, Medicare, those are government, payroll matches, and our workers' compensation costs. When it comes to health insurance, the other item to remember is these are all contractual with our union negotiations, which our current contracts expire this June 30th. So we're going into negotiations, and so we'll see where that process takes us.
Okay.
Some little flexibility, outside the contractual process.
Okay. So it is anticipated increment for 4% for the $1 million. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yes. That's the increase for healthcare for the general town employees.
Okay.
For healthcare.
So there's no chance, I'm kind of joking here, there's no chance for decrement, always like increasing?
It sort of just depends on the number of factors. It depends on the coverage types that we have to offer.
Okay.
Employees are using. It depends on what the contracts are for our employees with the collective bargaining. And it depends on the health insurance market in general and where the rates are. Some years are better than others.
Okay, thank you. So just not trying to be mean here. I want to understand. Sure. So before I have another general question. Sit here, but I was trying to find, maybe I'm popping off. I was trying to find the last cost item, which is like $3 million at the very bottom. Capital and non-recurring, but I don't see.
Oh, capital and non-recurring.
Yeah, which page is this at? I'm trying to find the information.
It's actually in two different places.
Okay.
First place is a summary of our current year capital expenditures. It's on pages 58 and 59. And that has a 1.3 million. Is that the one?
Yeah, it's on, so page
58, 59.
58, 59.
It's like a list of capital projects and follow along and how much each one costs.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, debt service, 2 million, for this is principal and interest on debt, $2,077,488. I'd like to point out, because I pointed this out for a number of years, you take the Amity Board of Education, the Woodbridge Board of Education, employee fringe benefits, and debt service, that takes up more than 75% of our budget, meaning that 25% of the budget is left over for all the various departments and debt. So there's not much left for the rest of it. Those are the numbers. Next is the Woodbridge Board of Education. $17,017,091.
May not be the right place, yes, but where's the roof? That needs to be fixed.
After that roof.
Having people rain on the inside.
There's an ad hoc building committee on it. That's what we're going to address. That's correct.
Are they here?
Who's in charge of that?
Members of the...
Okay, so what's the story on the Beecher roof?
So if you look on, I think it's page 63 in the budget, you see the roof is identified there.
Under expenditures?
Yeah, so roof replacement and remediation of drainage issues at the school is both part of the building committee's charge.
so we have them out another year. You can't actually do that roof until next summer, not this summer. So it will hit our budget in the following year.
So in the meantime, we're buying plastic sheets and buckets and rain boots.
To the extent that the Woodbridge Board of Education can find money in their budget, right now they have a little bit of a surplus, yes. Making sure that the water's not coming in should definitely be done.
But it's not going to be done properly for at least a year from the summer.
The project itself.
So the summer of '24.
Correct.
I think it's a big disappointment. I know we've got budget cycles, but to have our kids literally rained on is crazy. And the fact that we can make arrangements to find other stuff, which I'll get to in comments in a couple of minutes, but how that cannot be one of the top priorities and move some of the dollars around to that, I don't get it. I mean, there's got to be some creativity here, and there's got to be high priority. We value education, right? I think we value a dry education, and we're not getting it right now, not for those kids. And I would think that with all this brain trust here, we'd figure out a way to move some dollars around and get that thing off the ground and do it this summer, not next summer. But we'll talk about that later. Okay, thank you for pointing out where it is.
Okay, next, and again, for those who arrived late, the Amity Regional Board of Education, they have a district meeting a week from tonight at 5:30, somewhere in this facility. And the following day, from 6 in the morning to 8 at night, is the referendum. So the Amity Regional Board of Education request is $17,967,346.
Hi, my name is Amy Seltzer, and I live on Dickinson Drive in Woodbridge. As a psychologist, I always look for patterns of behavior, and the deception and lack of transparency by the Amity administration and their board is a pattern of behavior that is not limited to the implementation of the DEI curriculum. It also appears in the budgetary process and its outcome, the proposed budget. There's a new course that the superintendent is teaching called Amity 101, How to Pad the Budget and Create a Surplus. Amity's had budget surpluses for many years. In the last 5 years, they've ballooned to an average of close to $2.5 million. This current year is no exception. 8 months into the operating year, as of February, the stated surplus is already close to $1.5 million. And will probably be $2 million by year end. So in the past, any surplus was returned to respective towns. However, since last year, the board decided to retain these multi-million-dollar surpluses to be spent at their discretion. As a result, now these multi-million-dollar budget surpluses truly function as overtaxation. And here are some examples of how the budget is padded. The superintendent keeps claiming it and will try to have you believe that she's doing zero-based budgeting. However, in fact, every year, she repeatedly inserts and pads the budget with the same items, like a medical and dental account, other post-employment benefits. She historically over-budgets these items so that they end up contributing to a surplus. This year, for example, already the medical and dental account is now projected to contribute $400,000 to a surplus because it was overestimated. The superintendent's proposed budget is based on an estimate of the number of students attending the high school next year. However, she overestimates the number of students by totally ignoring the significant number of students who drop out of the Amity system from 8th grade to 9th grade. Last year, it was 40 students. By the way, she already knows the exact number of students dropping out of the Amity system this coming year, as the deadline has passed for families of 8th graders submitting withdrawal forms. She refuses to provide to anyone, including board members who inquire, as to the number of students leaving. Instead, she maintains a higher number as another way to pad the budget. The state of Connecticut has increased their reimbursement for special needs. They'll be reimbursing 85% of what the district has spent. Yet the proposed budget only notes an 80% reimbursement rate. Again, another misleading way of padding the budget and generating a surplus. The superintendent includes putting replacement costs for new items, such as, I think, the new field, into the budget, even though that money would not be needed for at least another 10 years, and could instead be bonded by the town at the time needed. This money is supposedly put in reserve, but when the budget is approved, it just becomes part of the general surplus, which could be used at the discretion of the superintendent. And we will soon be finishing paying down its debt, and yet it's made to appear in the budget as if it's still being paid off in significant amounts. And last but not least, my favorite topic, DEI. Embedded in last year's proposal was a hiring of a DEI coach. When community members objected to the hiring of a DEI coach, the superintendent said she would, quote, take it out of the budget, unquote, and use grants to pay for the position. That's misleading, as in fact the position remains in the budget, but uses other income, such as grant funding that was included in the budget, other income or revenue. So now, despite continued objection, in this year's budget, the taxpayers will be paying for the DEI coach, since the grant money only supported the position for 1 year. This year's proposed budget includes $50,000 for additional DEI equity audits. This is after stating clearly at a prior board meeting that they had completed the audits and that no further audits were being done. Just add that to the over $150,000 already spent on DEI and critical race theory training, and untruthful statements like, quote, we're still in the assessment phase of audits, despite the fact that it's taken 3 months for the administration to respond to a FOIA request made in January 2023 because there's, quote, so much material for them to gather and organize when we asked for any DEI-related curriculum materials. And students have certainly come home with handouts documenting that. So if you're looking for truth, honesty, and facts, not fabrication, deception, and manipulation, here it is. The superintendent repeatedly asks for more when it's well demonstrated that we need less. Their requested 2.25% budget increase of $1.2 million, when added to the current year's $2 million surplus, actually represents a 6% increase from 1 year to the next. I would like to support AMI education. Both of my children attended the high school. But the deceptiveness in implementing the DEI curriculum that's harmful to students academically and emotionally, and proposing an inflated budget not based on the reality of what academic excellence costs, give me great pause. The reality is that a zero increase, in fact, would not hurt AMI at all. As a result, I'll be voting a firm no at the budget referendum. Don't be afraid to vote no. Don't fall for the scare tactics that sports teams or your favorite teacher will be cut or the school will have to shut down. Sports teams and teachers are already included in the basic budget. If this referendum is voted down, the budget would simply go for revision and reduction, and then another vote. And the referendum would continue referendums would continue every 3 weeks until it's passed. In the meantime, the school would continue to run on the prior fiscal year's budget. Connecticut, as you know, is nicknamed the Nutmeg State because ships laden with exotic foreign spices like nutmeg all came to Connecticut first for them to turn around and resell them. But being a nutmegger is not really a compliment, as early inhabitants had the reputation of making wooden nutmegs and mixing them in with the real nutmeg as part of their sales to fool their customers and make more money. This proposed budget is one of those nutmegs, and they're selling it to Woodbridge, Bethany, Orange town voters. Telling the administration and the board to be transparent, honest, and truthful will be the best way to support the teachers, the school system, and most importantly, the students. Thank you.
Excuse me. First,
well-written, very well-performed speech. I agree with a lot of points. As a student at Amity, I oftentimes feel like they're perhaps mismanaging their budget in different ways, although I don't know the numbers quite as well as perhaps you do. However, one comment on the DEI that teachers have been being trained on and implementing in their classrooms, I don't think that there's evidence that they're emotionally damaging to students. If anything, I've noticed that students are becoming more aware of the world that we live in, and if anything, we're just becoming more prepared to advance beyond Amity. I think a lot of the things that the school does well is really just encouraging their students to pursue fields of interest with extensive knowledge on various subjects. And I just wanted to quickly say that if the Amity budget isn't upheld and supported, then I don't see a lot of students already coming to these meetings, but I don't think after me many will, and will feel the power and sort of capability to speak up for themselves, to receive the education that they want to.
Thanks. Yes, Dan again. Just a quick question. So I know that one of the things in the letter was the number of students. Like, is there a way, as you're presenting the budget, to actually see the number of students that are projected to be enrolled in both the Beecher and the Amity High School?
Board of Education puts out their own budget document, which is a lot more extensive than this brief summary that we put in here.
Okay.
You can, if you go on their website, I'm sure there's a link to your budget document available on their website, Amity, and I'm sure you can find a lot more of that information.
No, that's fine. But I'm just curious. Like, is it how? Like, I guess how complex is it when this budget is presented to ultimately inject a line that talks about projected number of enrollees that's figured into the numbers? So that way, for the reader who's sitting trying to figure out from year to year what is actually changing and what support is needed, it's easier to kind of look, oh yeah, the number of students are either going up or going down, so as a result, all the other lines should be commensurate with the enrollees.
Yeah, we could, for future.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Sure.
The other thing, just to, I like what you said, and I hear you too, but I would just say one thing. I mean, I do evidences. I have 4 children that went through various, from Beecher all the way to Amity. I have 2 older are graduating Amity. The middle one was in Bethany, and I have the youngest in the Beecher. So I will tell you this, that there's numerous amounts of time that I've documented where the time in the classroom is wasted with all this nonsensical stuff. My kids have gone to science fairs, okay? And we had almost no teacher participation in science fairs. And speaking about DEI, most people that participate in science fairs, you should come and see. They're all immigrants, including myself. I'm an Armenian immigrant, and the rest of the immigrants that were there, either Indian or Chinese. Okay, these science fairs from Woodbridge, and we have almost no teacher participation. I was really pissed off last time I went because it was just horror show. Okay, the students were left to themselves to man the entire science fair. Okay, so to me, instead of wasting time on teaching people how to get more upset about stupid stuff, my kid comes to me and says, yeah, they were talking about microaggression in English class. He says, is this a graded assignment? No. Did they give you literature to read? No. So what was the point? I don't understand. What's the point? And thank God that my kids have me and my wife, who's also an immigrant, to tell them the real stuff and the real deal, okay? But the rest of the kids, I can't even vouch for. It's I don't know what they're teaching you in there. But all I can see is there's so much time wasted on this nonsensical stuff. But thank you for the additional care.
I have a whole other paper on DEI, so I don't want to get into that here because I'm trying to stick to the finance. But if you feel free to give me your email, I'm happy to email it to you. As far as the projected enrollment, they basically use the number of students that are in the 8th grade, and they translate that into all of them going to 9th grade. And that's a big assumption. And as you can see, this past year, 40 students, which was a large, more significant number this year, decided not to attend. And a woman named Megan Rabuse did a whole study, contacted every single family, and found out that it was the, one of the terms she used? It was
The term, but she did a good job. It was in the paper about 3 editions ago, with a nice pie chart to show why people left.
all the different reasons. So anyway, my point is, most of those students were from Orange, and as a result of that loss, Bethany and Woodbridge in this coming year are now going to be paying more money because they represent a larger proportion of the students. So I think it's going to go up something like 5% for Woodbridge and something like 4% for Bethany.
And on the town of Orange, we have a tax cut this year.
Yep, they are. One more point about the budget, how all this ties together. And Rita just made a good point that because of the way the system works, we're going to get a bigger piece of the Emory budget as time goes on. Orange kids are leaving, we have more kids going into the program, and they're going to stay, they're going to go through. On top of that, and this gets to the bigger picture, the whatever the fund was called we got from the federal government that we're going to spend on partly on the Grove and partly on the old firehouse and all that, please reconsider that. As you know, we are the 7th highest mill rate in the state. And you may also know that in Hartford now, there is a proposal to change the formula for our tax rate to go from 70% of assessed value to 75% of assessed value. I've never seen a government agency turn down an opportunity to get more money out of the voters and out of the taxpayers. So that is somewhere, maybe not in the distant future. But whether it comes or not, where I think we should be looking to invest our money is in where we can generate more revenue for this town. And economic development is the place to do it. And down at the bottom of Amity Road is where the economic, EDC and the 2030 Commission has been lauded so highly in so many articles and in so many conversations in town. That's where they're zeroing in on where money can be invested to bring revenue back into the town. So I would say, Beth, with all due respect to your thing to make the Grove prettier or to bring the dormant old firehouse back to life, which we've managed to live without though these many years, that money really needs to be invested where we're going to get a return. And the return has to be in terms of tax revenue that comes in from other than our own residents. And I would suggest to you that now's a good time to have a course correction because there's many things coming our way with the body count, potentially higher taxes are coming because of what Hartford's doing. So we're really looking at some potentially very bad news economically for the past several years. Now is the time to start bracing for it, not till after it hits us. Thank you.
Okay, the final item of the budget that was mentioned already, I don't know if anybody else has a question, is capital non-recurring, $1,322,084. Again, these are all the capital projects and the capital requests for the town, which started out at $3.2 million and we got it down to $1.3 million. So this page is in the budget outline. What those are. Any questions on that? Okay, anything else? Yes.
I want to ask a couple questions. This is on the capital improvement. Jim Michael, Robert 5 Old Stowe. A couple things. So we're going to spend, millions on the firehouse, and yet I also see in capital improvements we're spending $333,000 on the Grove. Those are the trees between the firehouse and the library. And what is $333,000 being spent on?
It's not only trees. It's going to be part of the, but first of all, let me correct Rebecca, we're not spending millions on the old firehouse. It's $2 million in the grant.
You didn't tell us the rest. What's the whole budget?
The budget is $2 million, and we're not going to be able to spend more if we don't have it. It's trying to narrow it down.
I was told by Tony just before that it's not certain what it's going to be spent.
Of course, we have a $2 million.
I know about that. I said, what's the total cost? And that seems to be out there, it's pie in the sky.
No, it's not a pie in the sky. We have a committee that is figuring out the budget for that.
So it's not figured out.
Not completely.
No, so we have no idea right now what the total cost is.
Correct.
Okay, so that's my point. So why are we spending $333,000 for the growth in this budget when we don't even have it figured out? I don't get it. And I don't get why, what is our priorities? As the person was talking about before with the Beecher Roof School, why would we not spend the money to fix a known problem first? Also, $1,314,000 for improvements in the business district. What does that include?
A lot of things. If you have to look, I can spend hours going over all of the committee report, the final report.
Well, give me an example. That's a lot of money.
Okay, connectivity, sidewalks. We haven't decided what's going to go there yet. I know. You want to answer the questions?
Well, you know what? You're asking the town for so much money with big tax increases, and again, it's not figured out. The other thing that's really bad, yeah, wait a minute, I just want to finish. I want to finish. Under a previous federal grant, we spent $400,000 on trees and shrubs. I remember talking to Nan Bergwissel and saying, this is the most poorly planned thing. It was supposedly designed by a landscape designer. It was the biggest waste of money, as I said it would be, because all the bushes along Emily Road were sprayed by salt. That was where my office was at the time. And all of them died. So we essentially wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal grant money. And again, it seems poorly planned, poorly thought out, just like the people who wanted to put the library in the swamp across the street. This is the kind of planning that you have not cut the town in for. And I want to know, if we spend more money on the firehouse, say it costs $4 million, does that have to go to referendum?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because that may be our only way of holding you accountable for mismanagement of money, because it seems so poorly thought out. And I'd really like to see a list for the town of what the business improvements are for more than $1 million. It seems excessive.
Couldn't help myself in the last two comments. So, a number of years ago, we had the Dr. Platypus, the guy from Yale, and let's put some trees, let's make it look pretty in the business district, and hopefully that'll solve the problem, and so on and so forth, and really nothing came of that, okay? And so now, okay, and I volunteered myself based on my experience working, I do a lot of real estate development. My opinion isn't really one of the one I give it here. And, you know, a number of you have probably heard me say in the past, there's really only 6 reasons to visit Woodbridge if you don't live here to come to the businesses. It's only 6. Okay? Probably Dave Wilbur can tell you what they are, because him and I have played this game before. You know, you got the JCC, Katz's Deli, okay? New England Brewery, the soccer place, the bowling alley, and the golf course. Other than that, if you don't live in Woodbridge, you're not coming here. And the way to make the businesses really improve is you create more reasons for people to want to come here. And it's not the ancillary supporting shops that do that. Those benefit from what brings something to the area, whether it's a larger big box store, whether it's an employment generator or a hospital, whatever it is that brings people to the area. So recently I said, geez, I wonder what the latest and greatest solution to economic development in Woodbridge is. And yes, the traffic getting up to the mirror, I get on the mirror every morning, and it's not as bad as it used to be, okay, because I guess more people are working from home. But we all do remember days when it was backed up all the way to Bradley Road and so on and so forth. And we all know how to cut down and cut through the ambient liquors or wherever it is to get around. But, so I looked and I said, okay, what's the solution? I get it. So an architect is giving us a recommendation, not an economic development person, an architect. Once again, we're back to the architect to make it pretty. And the two solutions that I read about was making it pretty again, okay, we heard that before, and let's make the road narrower so they drive slower. Really? That's going to make me want to shop in Woodbridge more? You're going to make it more inconvenient to travel through there, you're going to make it more dangerous? So I can't see the businesses I'm driving behind? Let's put some trees up so we can block the stores that are in the back of Selden Plaza. Because I think even someone from in Selden Plaza came out and actually spoke at one of the meetings about that. Like, please don't do that. You know, there's a lot of smart people in town. There's a lot of ways to cut this. Some things we have to look at things differently. The reality is as much as I agree with Chuck spending money in the business district to try to generate some income, it's very limited, because there's only a certain amount of square footage that can be developed, because we're already collecting taxes on those buildings that are already there. If there isn't a business in it, the only thing we're missing out on is the tax that we collect from the equipment and whatever is in there. So, you know, I'm not sure if that's going to be our solution. And every campaign I hear, and we're going to increase the grant list, the opportunity there is very small. The real issue is everything we talked about here tonight and control our spending. And I know, Matt, you're right, 75% is stuff that we don't have any control over, so we've got to do a really good job of the 25%. And the comments that were made about what's happening here at Amity, that's a huge problem. Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate the work you put in, and hopefully you've taken all of our comments today, and not just, oh my goodness, I wish they would just stop talking. No, take it, openly and think about some of the things that were said, and hopefully so we can do a better job. Thank you.
Could I ask, we have the 2030 co-chair here, Susan, I don't want to put you on the spot. Maybe you could explain a little bit more about what that committee was thinking about in terms of the business district, in a few simple sentences.
We've had 4 community meetings. We've had input from various segments of our community. We are still very much in process, because it takes a process. We've divided the discussion into 2 sections. One is connectivity, which has to do with sidewalks and roads. The other is with placemaking as a way of enhancing the business district. Bob was at several of these meetings. He chose this time to respond to it. I don't think we should spend time in the preliminary budget talking about what really is a vibrant reimagination of what we call the business district. It's going to be a long time coming. We're called 2030 for a reason, because it's not going to happen tomorrow. We don't control those properties. So I encourage everybody to pay close attention to what the possibilities are, not what you think the possibilities are not.
Does the architect have any?
We're not having this discussion again.
Very good.
Okay, my name is...
Just hold it.
Okay, Silvana Babajanyan, 136 Northwood. I'm mother of Vartan Babajanyan. We've been here for 13 years. I don't have any kids in school. I'm supporting my grandkids at school, they're 4. One thing I asked the committee and whoever is, making these budget decisions, how long you gonna increase the meal rates? Now we're almost 45, right? So how long you gonna, and how much we're gonna pay and continue increasing this? And I don't see from what I hear today, anything like economically, like you said, beneficial to the town at all. With most of the things I see expenses, but not revenues, from what I hear. Number 1. Number 2, These capital projects that you are working on, with, which is very high cost, is anybody from residency participate in discussion and provide their input? Because we have very intelligent community here. We have lawyers, we have engineers, we have many other specialists that could contribute to the discussion and contribute to the decisions you are making during your discussion. So I never been part of it. I would like to be, or my husband, for example, but it would be nice to engage with community and residents when you're discussing these big items projects. That will be my kind of 5 cents. And this is my first time, and I hope I will be here more.
Mika Cardozo, 30 Spring Valley Road here in Woodbridge. I've heard a couple of comments related to the mill rate, of the mill rate raising, number 7th highest in the state. We also heard, for example, comparing to Easton. I did a quick check while I was sitting there just to look. The average house value in Easton is about $800,000. The average house value in Woodbridge is about $500,000. If you do the simple math, the person in Easton is paying more taxes than the person in Woodbridge. So it's not necessarily specific. The mill rate isn't what drives it. There's other criteria that does, but it's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking of the mill rate itself, is that because they have a 28% mill rate in Easton, does not necessarily mean they're paying less taxes than you are here in Woodbridge at 42 or 43%. So it's just something as we're doing this budget cycle for folks to keep in mind, and I just wanted to make mention of it. Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else? Well, thank you all for coming, and May 15th, meeting? See you. Thank you. Okay, Board of Finance. We're going to be 3 minutes.